It is now 4 o'clock and it's the time for the commencement of the meeting. Currently isn't a quorum present. I draw your attention to clause 510 of the Council's Code of Meeting Practice, which says a meeting of the Council must be adjourned if a quorum is not present, and Part B says within half an hour after the time designated for the holding of the meeting. So we have to wait until a quorum is present.
Mr. CEO, bearing in mind that we have no one in the chair at the moment, shouldn't we elect a chair from amongst those present?
You now have a quorum.
So that wasn't actually an answer to my question. Should
Yes.
we elect a chair from amongst those present?
Yes, and until the Mayor arrives. Sorry.
I'll
Yeah,
second the
can we just get some
motion that's been
advice?
moved by Councillor Lamont.
6.3 of the Code of Meeting Practice. If no chairperson is present at the meeting of the council at the time designated for the holding of the meeting, the first business of the council meeting must be the election of a chairperson to preside at the meeting. The election of the chairperson must be conducted by the Chief Executive Officer, or in the absence of an employee of the council designated by the Chief Executive Officer to conduct the election, or by the person who called the meeting, or by a person acting on their behalf if neither the Chief Executive Officer nor a designated employee is
Mr.
present.
CEO, I think we can take that as read and you don't need to waste any more time.
Are you stalling?
No, I'm reading what the process is. We just need the chair. Or
No.
yeah,
a motion.
the Deputy Mayor should take the chair. We don't have a mayor. The Deputy Mayor needs to take the chair.
Congratulations, Councillor Moreland.
Off you go. Come on, we don't want to waste any more time.
You've got 30 minutes. But then we have a quorum, so.
Mr. Mayor, we really missed you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and a welcome to everyone in the gallery. Yeah, we've got a couple. And those watching along at home today. I now declare the meeting open at 4:05.
No, I can't open the meeting.
We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we live, work and play. We pay our respects to Dark and Young Country and elders past and present. We recognise the continued connection to these lands and waterways and extend this acknowledgement to the homelands and stories of those who also call this place home. We recognise our future leaders and the shared responsibility to care for and protect their place and people. Please turn your mobile phones off or switch to silent. In the event of an emergency, wait for instructions from council staff or security guards. If we need to evacuate, council has 2 emergency muster points, one on the footpath of the Grand Hotel at the front of the building and the other at Frank Balance Park to the rear of the building. If you experience a medical emergency, please alert security or council officers for assistance. Please be advised that this meeting is audio, video, visually recorded, webcast live and archived on the council's website. In accordance with council's code of meeting practice, filming and photography are not permitted. Anyone observed filming the meeting may be asked to leave. Members of the public in the gallery are asked to be respectful at all times to each other and to the councillors in the chamber. In accordance with the code of meeting practice, any disruptive behaviour will not be tolerated. Councillors are reminded that they have been elected to represent our community and are tasked with making decisions and solving problems. Please keep the debate respectful according to Council's Code of Conduct and avoid making statements that might defame or offend. Councillors in the chamber are reminded to turn the microphones on before speaking and off again when no longer addressing council. In accordance with section 7.1 of the new code of meeting practice, councillors should stand when addressing the meeting if they are physically able to. Audio clarity is significantly improved when speakers speak directly into the microphone rather than addressing the room or looking away. Due to their location on a raised platform, the executive leadership will remain seated when speaking. As the Mayor, I support this. I will now ask each councillor to disclose any conflict of interest they may have in items on the agenda tonight. Firstly, myself, I confirm that I do not have any conflicts. Councillor Milland.
No conflicts, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Daniels.
No conflicts, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor McGregor.
No conflicts, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Castles.
No conflicts, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Crowley.
No conflict, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Walsh.
No conflicts, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Neal.
I have no conflicts, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Lamont.
No conflicts, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Smith.
Nothing to declare, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Eaton.
Also nothing to declare, thank you.
Councillor Stanton.
No known conflicts to declare, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Wright.
Nothing to declare, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor McNamara.
Nothing to declare, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor McQuaid.
No conflicts, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, councillors.
Mr. Mayor, I'll possibly through you to the CEO. I note that it has become commonplace for councillors to say no known conflicts. Can I please be advised whether that is sufficient to satisfy the requirements of the Code of Meeting Practice?
It is sufficient, with the understanding that all that councillors should be aware of any actual or perceived conflicts that may arise, and therefore they should be knowledgeable about those and disclose them when necessary.
Councillor Lamont.
Just a quick question before we start. I'm just trying to figure out a lot of questions in the community about why this extraordinary meeting was actually called. I know you had the powers to do it, but there have been a lot of people sort of asking why. Because the threshold doesn't look like it's been met.
Because I felt it was needed to organise it quickly to deal with some issues. Thanks. Item 2.1, rescission motion, EPC 26158, Open Coastal Management Programme. Councillors, I've had a rescission motion submitted on an item from last week's council meeting, EPC 26158, Open Coastal Management Programme. The rescission motion is signed by Councillor Lamont, Councillor Smith and Councillor Walsh. Firstly, we have to consider the rescission. Councillor Lamont, will you be moving the rescission motion? Yeah. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Walsh. Any discussion?
Yep, please.
Councillor Lamont.
So, first of all, why is it important that this CMP is sent to the Minister today rather than waiting until the 26th of May Ordinary Council meeting? And does this urgency have anything to do with the Section 68? The RA Minister, this is what Director Nichols said on Council meeting 28 October last year. The RA Minister is not proposing to approve permanent works except when those are proposed through the CMP and certified by the government. I'll repeat that, permanent works will not be approved unless they are in the certified CMP. That's for the Section 68. So what does this mean? It means the timing of this meeting raises very real questions. Is this about coastal management, or is it about meeting a deadline for a Section 68 seawall? We're being asked to rush through a document that will enable long-term coastal armouring works that already have been described by Council as medium to long-term, not emergency. And let me explain why this document's not the best and should not be certified in its current form. Firstly, it does not reflect what the community are asking. At Wamburrel Beach, around 63% of submissions opposed seawalls and coastal armouring, yet 80% wanted offshore sand nourishment. The only thing that we can be sure of with the CMP is that hard structure is coming to Wamburrel Beach regardless. Sand nourishment is years away. It depends on funding, approvals and specialised equipment. But the rock structure is being pushed ahead now. It is in the Section 68, which is why we're here tonight. So what happens? We risk ending up with the impacts of a seawall without sand needed to protect the beach. And it's the beach that will protect the houses, not the rocks. They're already there and they're doing a lousy job. Council doesn't even know how much sand will be required to make this work. And the proposed user pay model has already been rejected once. This simply doesn't stack up. We also need to acknowledge a critical fact. Wamburrel Beach has only been protected so far because of New South Wales government-owned land and the government's refusal to support a seawall on it. That has been one of the last safeguards for this beach. Any transfer of land to council should not occur until offshore sand nourishment is secured and in place. And then there's the biggest contradiction in this entire CMP document, that engineering works will not be enough. Page 118, I did ask Director Nichols about planned retreat before, what page it was actually located. It's on page 118 if everyone wants to know. It says eventually we will need to retreat from high-risk areas like Wamburrel and the entrance north. But where is the plan? There are no timelines, no funding, no clear pathway, just a promise to look at it later and destroy the beach in the meantime. At the same time, the CMP proposes embedding engineering design requirements in the DCP. The existing DCP already enables risky development on sand dunes and land that should not be built on, even breaching building lines. And now the CMP is proposing to enable and encourage more risk to protect the development that shouldn't be there in the first place. Some of these homes effectively act like seawalls themselves. They don't need protection. They will worsen erosion for neighbouring properties. Pointed out in Dunford versus Gosford City Council, which I know, Mr Mayor, you're aware of that case. This is not good coastal management. It is locking our community into greater risk, greater cost and greater damage. The CMP is inconsistent. It talks about retreat while enabling more development. It relies on sand nourishment while progressing armouring first. It acknowledges long-term risk while encouraging short-term reckless decisions. This is not good governance, this is not transparency, and this is not in the best interest of the Central Coast community. I implore my fellow councillors, especially those that use it, and I know there's family members here of councillors that do actually use Wamburrel Beach, do not vote to send the CMP to the Minister in its current form, but instead to support my amendments or my rescission, alternate motion, so that we can deliver a plan that genuinely reflects the community, is strategically consistent and stands up to proper scrutiny. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Reaton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I rise to speak against the rescission motion and note that there's no information put forward to support a rescission, and I see no reason to change Council's decision.
Thanks, Councillor Reaton. Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I do have one question through you, Mr Mayor, to the CEO or Director Nichols before I make a bit of a speech. I'd like to ask, given the overwhelming community support for offshore sand nourishment and the significant opposition to hard protection works, the unresolved environmental assessment issues and the absence of enforceable sequencing safeguards, what is the public interest justification for refusing to revise the CMP, particularly in terms of reflecting community sentiment and responses before admitting for certification?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor. I think the council report and the other reports that deal with how we've exhibited and addressed public submissions and how those changes have been incorporated into the draft CMP and then into the final CMP. So I don't think there's anything else I can add except for in those reports, Councillor.
So what specific harm would arise from revising the CMP before certification?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor, we've put a draft on exhibition. We've had quite a substantial exhibition process. We've responded to those, put another draft on exhibition. We've had community LGA-wide surveys. We've then responded to all those issues and we've put a second draft to council. So I don't believe there's a need to do further rounds of exhibition to get community feedback into the document.
Thank you, Director. Through you, Mr. Mayor, one final question. Can the CEO or you, Director Nichols, clarify whether the principal direct beneficiaries of hard protection works are individual property owners rather than the broader public?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, what we've proposed, Councillor, is sand nourishment, as we've described, and that's underpinned by a rock revetment that addresses the risk while also continuing to work on beach amenities. So I don't know if I can provide any more detail than that about who's the beneficiary. There are community beneficiaries and there are also individual landowners who are beneficiaries.
Okay, so thank you. I'll claim my time. Before we have Councillor McWade talking about it being more delay for delay's sake, this is about getting one of the most consequential environmental planning decisions this council will make absolutely right. The Open Coast Coastal Management Program will shape the future of our coastline for decades. It will determine how we respond to erosion, climate pressures, public access, ecological protection and community safety. When a decision of this magnitude proceeds despite clear evidence of unresolved community concern, incomplete environmental assessment and substantial questions around sequencing and long-term strategy, this council has not only the right but the responsibility to reconsider. This rescission motion is about restoring integrity to that process. The public exhibition outcomes were clear. The community overwhelmingly supported offshore sand nourishment as the preferred first response. The community overwhelmingly raised concerns about hard coastal protection structures, including seawalls, because of the very real risks they present: beach loss, scour, transfer of erosion impacts, and the gradual privatisation of what should remain shared public coastline. And yet the version adopted by Council weakens the practical priority of sand nourishment and leaves open a pathway for engineered hard protection to proceed ahead of the very strategy the community supported. This is not responsive planning, this is not participatory democracy, and it is certainly not progressive environmental governance. If Council asks the community to engage in good faith, to spend their time making submissions, attending consultations, reviewing technical documents and expressing informed views, then we have an obligation to demonstrate exactly how those views shape the final outcome. At present, this CMP does not adequately do that. A core principle is that public participation must be meaningful, not just procedural window dressing. This rescission motion simply asks Council to honour that principle. It also asks us to apply the precautionary principle. We know that hard coastal structures can create serious unintended consequences, and we know that coastal and lagoon systems are interconnected. We know insufficient modelling of end effects and lagoon interactions can shift risk onto neighbouring communities. And we know from the CMP itself that in some high-risk areas, planned retreat may ultimately be unavoidable, and that is written into this CMP. So why should we rush to certify a document that leaves these questions unresolved? Why should we lock ourselves into pathways that may worsen long-term environmental and social outcomes? The proposed amendments are entirely reasonable. They seek clear sequencing, scientific rigour, environmental transparency, honest acknowledgement of long-term retreat possibilities or realities, and accountability to community feedback. all of this matters.
Thanks, Councillor Walsh. Councillor McNamara.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'm going to be speaking against the rescission motion. I'm in the same position as I was last week and probably for the last year and a bit that it's been coming through council, and that's my position. I'll be voting against the rescission motion. So with 2 for and 2 against, Mr Mayor, please put the motion.
Yeah. The motion's been put, but Councillor Lamont's got the right to reply. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to answer Councillor Eden's question about there not being information. I've been talking about this since I've been elected. The only person in this room, actually 2 people, 3, that have bothered actually asking me anything about it is Councillor McQuaid, where he called me on a Sunday afternoon to find out some detail. The Mayor came to CSOS before we were elected, and as did Councillor Daniels. So thank you to the 3 of you, but none of you have actually ever bothered asking about any information or why I have taken this position. And long-standing, you're just not interested. I mean, before the election, I know Councillor Wright was saying, well, he doesn't know enough. You've had heaps of time, but you don't ask. No one ever asks any questions, which is really disappointing, and you're not listening to the community more than anything. That's the bigger problem. One last question through you, Mr Mayor. Have we actually worked with the community, or the beachfront homeowners, on the designs? Because that was actually part of Resolution 796/25.
Through Mr Mayor, Councillor, the 2... Sorry, didn't working? Or... Take that on notice, Councillor. Yep.
All right. All right. Put an amendment. All those in favour of the amendment? Of the motion, sorry. Sorry, the motion. The rescission motion. All those in favour. So Councillor McGregor, Councillor Castles, Councillor Crowley, Councillor Walsh, Councillor Neal, Councillor Lamont, Councillor Smith. Against, Councillor McKenna, Councillor Mulland, Councillor Daniels, Councillor Eaton, Councillor Stanton, Councillor Wright, Councillor McNamara, Councillor McQuaid. The rescission motion is lost. Next item on agenda is item 3.2, deferred item, notice of motion demonstrating responsible leadership. Councillor Castles.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr Mayor.
Oh, sorry, I missed one. Apologies. Deferred notice of motion, establishment of Central Coast Council Adopt to Verge programme. Councillor Stanton.
Are we just bringing this off the table and continuing, or
No.
must I move again? All right,
It has to be seconded.
Thank you.
Councillor
I
Eaton
will
seconded.
move the motion as it appears on the screen.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Councillor Eaton second.
To keep it short and sweet, given we've already discussed this, I'll just round up some of the questions that came up at the previous meeting about this. I think it's really important that we understand the English definition of consolidate and expand. That means that the existing programs are put in the one program, and then we're going to make it bigger. So in no way is any money being removed. In fact, more money is being put in. The proposal is to allocate the $100,000 that is part of the draft budget, in addition to the consolidated amounts from other existing programs that will then further expand this program into a successful Adopt a Verge program. Now again, the premise is that residents can apply to council to plant local native species that council dedicates as the correct amounts and in correct dimensions and measurements. And there will be a process that is followed, and then residents are then empowered to plant additional ones in addition to free days where they receive free trees and plants as part of the budgeted amount. So this means that when local residents all come to us all the time saying, please plant more trees, we are giving them an additional $100,000 worth of trees. In addition to that, residents can plant their own trees. So this way, the entire Central Coast gets to be more greened. This helps with urban heat island effect, and it helps us with our green corridors. Further, I'd like to say that often in this chamber, people say that they need to have advance notice of these motions and need to have opportunity to discuss. And in the last 7-8 days, and the 4 or 5 days before that, when this was on the agenda, I've not received a single person in this room come to me with any questions, any comments, any suggestions. So in that case, considering there'd been so many questions at the previous meeting, I'm sure that they've all been answered, as you've not come to me once. So I'm imploring you to vote in favour of this and trust that there's no further questions.
Thank you. Councillor Stanton, Councillor Castles.
Yes, I have an amendment, if that's okay to do that now, or bring that up. I did send it through to Civic Sport last week, obviously. So my amendment deletes, in clause 4, deletes A, B and C, and instead is number 4 now, receives a draft Adopt a Verge program policy, including procedures to the August 2026 Ordinary Council meeting. And that's my amendment that I've put forward.
Have I got a seconder for the amendment? Councillor McGregor.
Is your amendment? That's not yours. Is that your amendment? Up here.
Councillor Neil. Councillor Neil.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I rise, frankly, I'm deeply concerned about the cynicism of this notice of motion that's before us. As both the community and the councillors are well aware, the policy of planting trees on the peninsula has been a major policy of my own since the election and subsequently. During the budget process, initially an allocation of $200,000 was provided for tree planting on the peninsula. But of course, during that period, despite commitments provided to me by councillors on the other side, that allocation was cut by $100,000 to the sum that it presently is. That money is critical for the peninsula. The peninsula is by far the most affected heat sink area on the Central Coast, the most heavily populated, the highest level of concrete and other hard surfaces, and the greatest intensity of population. That is why this sum of money, $100,000, an exceedingly small amount, was allocated, and frankly it should have been close to 10 times that amount to really effectively deal with the problem each year. To take away this small amount of money and provide planting for the whole of the Central Coast is really an act of vandalism. And I think it shows a cynicism and a lack of care for the community on the Central Coast that I find, frankly, quite astonishing. This money is needed. There is a problem that has been acknowledged for quite some time, that the community on the peninsula, beyond any other part of the Central Coast community, is affected by a lack of tree canopy. And to take this away, this small fragment of funding that will provide some assistance to this community so adversely affected by their environment, is really quite astonishing. This money spread around the Central Coast is to be handed out as free trees. Now, there's nothing wrong with handing out free trees. I don't oppose that. What I do oppose is the fact that that money is being taken from a much more critical program that has been debated multiple times since our election to council.
Sorry, point of order, my screen is not working. This isn't actually talking to the motion.
Yep, I agree with Councillor Stanton, Councillor Neil.
Her point of order is completely incorrect.
No.
I'm debating exactly
I'm
the
ruling
motion,
on it.
and
I'm
if you
ru-
make that ruling, I will move that your ruling is incorrect.
Well, my ruling is, it's a point of
I'm-
order.
Mr. Mayor, I move dissent.
Put the motion to dissent. All those in favour?
Mr Mayor, can you explain why you're supporting
I don't have to. I don't have to. No, I don't have to. All those
Mr. Mayor, I can't understand what you're actually moving now. Can you please clarify? I've moved
motion to
dissent.
dissent to see on your ruling, on my ruling. So motion to dissent.
As a mover of dissent, I'm entitled to speak to that motion before you put it.
Yep,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
only you.
This is just a continuation of the lack of failure to properly consider the matters before us. This isn't school debating. This isn't point scoring. This is about decisions that will actually affect our community, will actually affect people on the peninsula who've had these difficulties and those difficulties with the canopy for a very great time. The idea that my discussion in the debate about the impact of this motion on the community is somehow not addressed in the motion is completely incorrect. And Mr. Mayor, I suggest that you reassess your position and allow me to continue as I should have.
Thanks, Councillor Neil. So now I'm putting the motion of dissent. All those in favour? Councillor McGregor, Councillor Castles, Councillor Crowley, Councillor Walsh, Councillor Neil, Councillor Lamont, Councillor Smith. Against? Councillor McKenna, Councillor Mullen, Councillor Daniels, Councillor Eaton, Councillor Stanton, Councillor Wright, Councillor McNamara, Councillor McQuaid. The motion is of dissent is carried.
I intend to.
Lost, sorry.
Mr. Mayor, you had me very excited for a moment then. I would like to continue to deal with the matter. This is important. We allocate so little for the protection of both the green and urban areas of the Central Coast. We allocate so little. And that this small sum of $100,000 becomes a plaything in order to erode the right of the members of the community in the peninsula to increase the tree canopy. I find it quite distressing, and I would think that if we'd allocated 100,000 times 10, if we'd allocated $1 million as we should have, and Councillor Stanton wanted to use 100,000 for general free tree planting, then that might have been reasonable. But when the only money allocated for the peninsula to increase the tree canopy is being reallocated, not taken, I'll accept Councillor Stanton's words, is being reallocated, then I think that's highly improper, and I suggest the councillors not support this.
Thanks, Councillor Neil. Councillor Lamont. Councillor Neil, can you put your buzzer off, please? Thanks.
First of all, Councillor Stanton pointed out that no one came to her with any questions, but I think she's trying to get our support. So did you actually come and see us to try to get support with your motion? No, that didn't happen, but you don't have to answer that now. Also, you've worked tirelessly for hours with the community on this motion. Have you actually talked to anyone in the community about it? Because there's 3 people here that I know have had meetings with the community on this issue for a long time, pretty much not long after we were elected. No, you don't have to answer yet. I'm still going.
Councillor Stanton, can you please stop jumping in?
You did that last week.
You can't jump in.
I said you don't have to answer.
Councillor Lamont.
You'll have your turn.
Councillor Lamont, yeah, you don't address the point,
So we're
not the
basing it on
person.
what staff are saying, and yet, as Councillor McGregor said last week, there are friggin' so many community members that are helping council do their job, like planting trees. Go and talk to some of them. And this is on exhibition. At least have the courtesy to find out what everyone in the community is saying before you start throwing money around so you look like you're pulling out your green thumb. You know, not on. Wait for the community to come back and tell you what they want, just once. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you,
Councillor,
Mr.
thanks.
Mayor. So looking at the amendment, Mr. Mayor, and it applies to the original motion as well, I suppose I have similar concerns for both of these. Firstly, we look like we're trying to adopt a program before we even get the report about what is involved. So that is my first concern. I think there may be some good intent in the original idea, and I want to give credit for that. But again, my concerns are the process, the fact that perhaps there might not be a full understanding of all of us councillors about what sort of species we're looking at. I am getting feedback from the community that they feel that they haven't been consulted, especially those people that are actively involved in planting activities, so tree planting in their local communities. It's not clear to me what adopt a verge means. Does that mean I just apply to plant a tree out the front of my house? Does it mean I can adopt a verge somewhere else? I actually think the name is an issue. If we just badged it as a community tree planting project, then I think there would be more scope to get some success here in the project, probably not in the chamber, but in the project itself. I do have concerns about the poor amount of funding. As Councillor Neal indicated, there were conversations about trying to get $200,000 in the budget out of the $71 million that was unallocated, and some of it is still unallocated. That was rejected. I actually think it should be $100,000 for each ward. So if we could allocate $500,000 towards tree planting on an annual basis, that would be a great initiative. I am also concerned, and I guess if we can get a report on this project before we adopt it, I am interested to know which of those urban street planting programs are being consolidated. I'm interested to know what council's current procedure is for replacement plantings. I get mixed feedback from a range of sources about, I think we have 2 to 1. Is it more? Is it less? Do they actually get planted? Do they actually get looked after? Do we have trees successful? I am concerned about verges right next to roads, and with no disrespect to our staff, but I guess I heard some stories of trees not surviving because of compaction from recent roadworks or nearby roadworks. So in either case, Mr. Mayor, I would really like to see that the first point in both of these motions is to get a report back that goes through all of these details, not to, sorry, Mr. Mayor, seriously?
Councillor Stanton, can you please stop butting in?
Yeah. So to get a report back before we actually say we're adopting something that we have no limited understanding of, in my view, a great thought bubble. I support the thought bubble, but I'd like to see what the substance of it is. And I will foreshadow another amendment if this one doesn't get up. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Smith. Councillor McGregor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'd like to start with a question through you to the relevant director. There's been a lot of talk about trees. How is this proposed Adopt a Verge program apply to shrubs and to pollinators and flowers and other vegetation? I can see why he's tuned out, but I would like a response.
Through Mr. Mayor, Councillor, my understanding is that it's a notice of motion by a councillor to seek a report from us. So I would do some work on this when we've, if the notice of motion gets up and we could provide details for council, we could consider that issue as part of the report if you like.
Okay, thank you. Look, I'll rise to speak in favour of the amendment and against the substantive motion for that reason alone. There's no clarity on this even from staff, and the original motion is quite prescriptive. The term reallocate, in my view, in the Oxford English Dictionary, would mean that you're taking resources from one area, putting them into another. despite the protestations and misguided statements from others in this chamber. There's a pretty clear definition of that word. Councillors, as Councillor Smith and others have outlined, and as the Director has outlined, if you get a report back, you might actually get some clarity around these things rather than infantile commentary and veiled little venal attacks on other councillors. Councillor Neal, to her credit, has fought very hard to try and implement the Greener Places strategy on the peninsula. Before the administrator came in, there was $400,000 budgeted for that. It was supposed to be $200,000 for the peninsula and $200,000 for the suburb of Gorican, which is actually 4 degrees hotter in summer than the rest of the Central Coast because of the heat island effect. Gorican and the north misses out, as usual, with the amalgamation. We might be able to get half of what we were entitled to 6 years ago on the peninsula, but it is still inadequate, and there is still no clarity around this, and the commentary provided by the elected body does not provide me with any hope as to where this is going, and it's quite clear that the operational wing is still not even really sure how to interpret this motion in its current form, as it is likely to be adopted. There is something telling in that process and procedure is important, and it's important that the chamber actually resolves things that are achievable. Councillors, we've gone through a budget process, and at no time did this come up. Councillor Neal and other councillors advocated very hard for the original Greener strategy and for their wards and for their areas and for their constituents, and in my view and in many others' view, basically insignificant and insufficient amount of money was allocated. The time to allocate more was actually then, not to rob Peter to pay Paul, which is what this organisation's got in trouble for a few times in the past, leading to a public inquiry. Councillors, your average Sydney council, your metropolitan council, the ones that we're roughly the same size as the large super councils, they're spending about $800,000 on this. Now, the City of Newcastle spends $1.5 million. I don't want to get, envy of our neighbours to the near north, but 100,000 versus 1.5 million, kind of puts us back in our place again, which is disappointing because I'd like to see this region, lead the way on sometimes. Furthermore, councillors, there's an even cheaper way of doing this, and that's to amend your planning proposals to make them more prescriptive, because developers can put these trees in for free. Council doesn't have to pay for the developers to do it. We can just get the people who are actually building these suburbs to build them in a way that the people moving into them actually want, so that they can save money without having to have the air conditioners running all the time, paying for prohibitively expensive building materials, and going above and beyond trying to get double glazed windows and double bricks and things like that, which is going to add cost to the construction. So you can serve your residents, you can serve the environment, and you don't even have to pay a cent. I mean, you can keep robbing my back pocket and everyone else's here who pays rates, but we don't even have to pay a cent for this. We can actually have the people who are coming up here and profiteering off our soil and our population put some trees in. We can just tell them what trees to put in. That takes away the argument around the natives or the exotics coming in. Further, as I've raised, the issue of habitat for pollinators and other species is quite important. It's not addressed by this. Now, over the 10 years that this council's been around, the issue of verge planting has been a rather vexed one, and there's been some significant opposition from some sectors around it. I personally stand on the side of those who would like to see more verge planting, but it shouldn't just be limited to trees. There are other options. Beautification of our region to increase tourism and general satisfaction is something that a lot of people have talked about. Residents take pride in this region, and we can empower them to make it even more beautiful than what it is if we look at some lower level things and some basic things. And again, as others have mentioned, I'll wrap up by saying we have many volunteer groups, and we have groups like GUST that are out there doing this on a day-to-day level. We should be working with them and having these things come through the community, not imposed from above when you end up with a lacklustre and insufficient program instead. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McGregor. Councillor Eaton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I rise to speak against the amendment and in favour of the motion, and against any other amendments to the motion. Well, they're not in favour of the motion, clearly, otherwise there wouldn't be an amendment. So can I correct a few furphies to start with? The motion doesn't call for a reallocation of existing programs. This is $100,000 of new money in the draft budget that you voted against. Remember that, you voted down the draft budget. Yes, you did. It's on the record. Thank you.
Councillor Eaton.
I'll move on, Mr Mayor.
Well, can the speaker will finish?
I'll move on,
Speaker will
Mr Mayor.
finish with
So the
people in
difference,
the queue with buzzers. We had an issue the last meeting, so please. Okay. Turn it off to Councillor Reading. You'll be...
so we can move on and get rid of this ridiculous point of order. I'll withdraw the suggestion that they voted against it and invite people to look at the record.
Thank you.
So to move on, what the difference, and the reason I have a problem with the main problem I have a problem with the amendment, is that this is just delay upon delay upon delay. You say you want trees, but you don't want trees soon. Coming to a meeting in August when we might or might not adopt a policy means you're going to be, at best, trying to plant trees over summer when it's the worst time to plant trees. So it's designed to fail. That's what this is about. The motion has been very well thought through. I know Councillor Stanton has spent a lot of time on this, spoke to the 3 relevant directors, and the basis of the procedure, the policy, is set out there. So we can get this happening as soon as the budget is passed early in the spring period when the trees will survive and we'll get a better bang for our buck. So the motion is to be endorsed and should be passed unanimously. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Reading. Councillor Castles.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. First of all, I would like to say that in response through you to Councillor Eaton, that point 4 is not there to sort of force a delay. It is there so that procedures are followed properly and that we have more detail before we actually adopt any particular motion and basically resolve one way or another about it. I think it's really important that we actually do that, whereas I don't believe the other point 4 that was there before really does do that. And you'll note in point 4, it also mentions including procedures. It's quite detailed. I'd also be more than happy to amend it slightly, which would be receive a comprehensive report included in it as well, which includes the draft. So I'd be happy to include that as well if that would be more useful. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Castles. Councillor Smith.
Mr Mayor, I was just going to ask Councillor Castles if she might accept just some tweaking.
Councillor Castles was closing now.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Yeah. Councillor Smith. Yeah. All right, so on the amendments, which was Councillor Castles, Councillor McGregor, all those in favour? Councillor McGregor, Councillor Castles, Councillor Crowley, Councillor Walsh, Councillor Neal, Councillor Lamont, Councillor Smith. You abstaining? Yeah, so Councillor Smith's abstaining for that one. All those against the amendment? Councillor McKenna, Councillor Mullen, Councillor Daniels, Councillor Eaton, Councillor Stanton, Councillor Wright, Councillor McNamara, Councillor McQuaid. The amendment is lost.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like to move an alternate amendment that I did provide to the staff, if I may, please.
Have you got a second there, Councillor Smith?
Don't know yet. If we could
Councillor Lamont, second.
That's not the one, but it's coming. Are we back to the other system? Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I will just take my own advice and move number 1 under point 2 that requests a report in response to the notice of motion, rather than try and commit a budget without getting that report back. So I will, I think I have a seconder. Again, this reinforces many of the concerns that I've already stated, so I won't spend a whole lot of time going over them. But I will just highlight again that $100,000 for a council this size is almost an insignificant amount for tree planting.
I mean, this is effectively an amendment to the budget. You can't find this money somewhere else.
Okay, I'll change that wording, Mr. Mayor. In principle, annual budget, because I know that's been used before. So, request for report in response to the with an in principle budget of $100,000 per. In principle, that was one of your specials. Get rid of the commits. Okay, allocates an in principle.
Councillor Eaton, just let Councillor Smith do. You're
Yeah,
right.
thank you. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. So what I will say, as I was saying, $100,000 across the region is a trivial amount. It's not clear what that money would be spent on. Is it just $100,000 on trees? Is it $100,000 on staffing time? Is it $100,000 that provides appropriate care? Certainly, some of the feedback. Actually, I won't go there. Again, I would seek to identify which existing programs Councillor Stanton is seeking to consolidate. It is not clear. For some of those programs, I would be concerned that it would be a downgrading of the effectiveness. I think if we are doing tree planting, then we should focus on local provenance native species. I think that it would be good to get in this report some information about programs that other councils are operating. I know there are many councils, there are a number of councils that have really impressive tree planting programs. I'm disappointed that our council hasn't yet been able to implement similar programs, but maybe this is the opportunity to do so. And again, I'd highlight that there does need to be some education and support provided to residents in terms of this program. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Smith. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One thing I would stress as an avid enthusiast of financials would be we keep throwing around terms like $500,000 is an insignificant amount of money, and we saw these sorts of conversations come up on the last council, and we saw exactly what happened with the last council. It's not an insignificant amount of money. We should not be using terms like that. The draft budget, the motion that I moved at the budget meeting, looked at increasing the operational surplus from $80,000 to over $500,000. So that's a difference of about $500,000. And we all found out that's not an easy task to go in and find $500,000 of operational expenditure. I think we need to move away from this mantra of you can always find another $1 million, $500,000 is an insignificant amount of money. These things matter, and an in-principle budget, well, I simply can't support something in principle. We need to see hard facts about how this would fit into our operational plan, which I point out is, I believe, still on public consultation. So I don't see how someone could vote for that in good measure, in good governance, a term that we use quite often here. I will be voting against the amendment, if that wasn't already clear, and I do thank again Councillor Stanton for her work with those 3 different directorates to bring this to the council.
Councillor McGregor. Councillor McGregor.
That's all right. I'll speak for it and then you can gag everyone else. How's that sound, Councillor Eaton? Got to take the chance to rise after the former speaker. Councillors, that's why you get reports, that's why you get options, and that's why you actually have the professional operational staff do what they do best, which is come back with the proper information and the proper way of doing things. It's not your job to go in and start getting your fingers into the weeds and pulling things out and taking a really hands-on approach with the operational budget management. That is not the role of a councillor. To quote our friend Rick Hart, your job is to be strategic. Your job is to act like a board of directors. The board of directors doesn't go into the finance department and start playing with spreadsheets unless you're in this council, and then they do. This is a real problem when it comes to the way that budget allocation happens and the way that these ideas appear out of the ether with their effervescence that they have. These field opinions are not evidence-based, and the problem is that we're having too many of these notice of motions get in the way and delay, obfuscate, waste time and resources like this meeting we're having today that could quite easily, these notices of motion, could quite easily have been dealt with at the next meeting, the next ordinary council meeting. Now, if we do really actually have some fiscal conservatives in here and some fiscal hawks, why do you keep adding extra money to expenditure side of things? There's always lots and lots added from a demand side, but when it comes to supply, when it comes to revenue policy, there's nothing there other than, oh yeah, I know, let's introduce paid parking. Oh, people in my ward are complaining about it. The stakeholders are annoyed. We better not do that. Oh, why don't we put up the developer contributions? Oh, because then the elites will be angry with us and our benefactors might be a little bit annoyed. Well, this is the problem here. There's no overarching strategy. There is just an ideology of austerity and then this kind of constant push from, you know, we want to pretend that we're fiscal conservatives, but I really want my bickies and I really want my pet projects and I really want this, and people have complained that it was not so popular, I voted for this. And we've got this just ad hoc toing and throwing and mashing up of things, and you've got 4-year plans, 10-year plans, they get delayed, thrown out the window, they get augmented. You know, you get people playing around with things like maintenance schedules so that they can do this. And then you also have artificial surpluses and artificial deficits created. And all of these little changes and this little bit of micromanaging from the committees and this overstretch from the council side, the council side of things, which is what many people in the industry and in the community are taking such exception with, that's where we're starting to have these problems, because the elected wing, the dominant faction within that, is getting far too hands-on with what the operational wing is doing. And there is a separation of the two for good reason. It should be of great concern to the elected wing that the organisational wing doesn't even know how to interpret the notices of motions. You'll also note that in more recent times, questions to the operational wing around council notices of motions get referred back as, oh, well, when we have to do something about this, we'll report on it because it didn't come from me. Because they don't even know what you're directing them to do half the time, or otherwise they'd be able to answer the question quite easily. That's a serious problem when you're directing people to do something that has no clarity around it. You know, this is where you run into problems. This is why you work with people and not against people, and you build consensus and you do things in a measured, evidence-based and strategic way if you actually want to be an effective councillor. Because we don't really see too many effective councillors here, and even though you have great power, you wield it very ineffectively. It's actually kind of funny to watch just how pithy and pathetic some of the attempts to actually get things through are, and you'll notice that a lot of these things will never go anywhere because people don't even know what they're implementing. And when there's too much pressure put on people to do things that they don't want to do, you'll find that when they're competing with other priorities, you're going to have things coming to your quarterly review where things that are quite important are going to get pulled out on, they're going to get missed. Like if you're looking through the GFC committee, the aptly named GFC committee papers, there's a whole lot of stuff in Wyong and in the north that gets paused, gets delayed, gets put on hold. Even in the far south, the Port Patonga seawall's maybe going to be on hold for a little bit now. All of this stuff is happening in the background. It's a direct result of these silly little juvenile notices of motion that come through saying, can we please have a few $100,000 here and there moved around? And, you know, I do have some sympathy for Councillor Wright's opinion when it comes to the fact that if we have, you know, lots and lots of people pushing around $100,000 or $200,000, but when you're spending $500 million on capital every 12 months, maybe you can find $100,000 for some trees. But the problem is what we're seeing time and time again is more and more of these motions are coming in. They're diverting resources, time and energy away from pre-existing plans and resources that are allocated. And then things that people really need, like, you know, new softball in play spaces, you know, new flooring for our community centres, that all gets paused so that people can work out what the hell is going on with some of these notices of motion that come to us that have no clarity, have no purpose, no idea. It's just ideology and idiocy, really. It's as simple as that. Can't categorise it any other way.
Councillor Lamont.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm actually going to, because we haven't had another against speaker, but speaking against this motion in a way because I just don't think it's enough. I think we should be allocating at least 200,000 in each ward. Newcastle spends 1.5 million, and if you compare this area of Newcastle compared to the Central Coast, it's tiny. And we think 100,000 for each ward is enough. So, sorry, Councillor Smith, I'd like to, would you be prepared for me to increase that to 200,000?
I think, how about at least?
At least, yeah.
Yeah.
So can we change that, please, Civic? Thank you. And yeah, as I said, just look at what other councils are spending. I think that's another thing that we really have to investigate. What are other councils around us doing? Talk to the community. There's bush care groups. Like, not just, how about not just look at verge planning or adopting verges? How about we look at the whole thing? Because that's important. This will go nowhere, that's what I think. So how about we first find out what the community thinks and wait for the submissions back from the exhibition that we've just had, and then decide on how we go forward with some more advice and information from council.
Thanks, Councillor Mont. No more debate. Putting the foreshadowed motion of Councillor Smith. It's now the amendment. So Councillor Smith, Councillor Mont, all those in favour? Councillor McGregor, Councillor Castles, Councillor Crowley, Councillor Walsh, Councillor Neal, Councillor Lamont, Councillor Smith, all those against? Councillor McKenna, Councillor Moreland, Councillor Daniels, Councillor Eaton, Councillor Stanton, Councillor Wright, Councillor McNamara, Councillor McQuaid. The amended motion of Smith and Lamont's voted down. All those in favour of the original motion? All right, reply, sorry.
Mr. Mayor, could we just see that original motion? And could I just ask Councillor Stanton if she'd consider just putting it under the heading of getting a report back? Sorry, when the that's the motion?
Yep.
So the motion, if we adopt this tonight, we're adopting to consolidate and expand the planning program without getting a report back on it. We're adopting to provide suitable local native species.
Debate's finished, Councillor Smith.
I'm asking Councillor Stanton if she'd consider amending it.
Debate's finished. Sorry. Councillor Stanton, Lamont, can you put your buzzer off? Thanks. Councillor Stanton, you want to close?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Smith wanted a report. The motion has a report. Councillor Lamont asked, did I consult the community? I absolutely consulted the community. We also received hundreds of requests as councillors for programs such as this. Members of the gallery have even publicly commented that this would be a great idea. Councillor Neal has been discussing the Peninsula program, which I very much understand the need for the pilot program on the Peninsula, but it was a one-off program. This is not taking anything away from that program. That was a one-off. This is not to do with that. This is to offer a program for across the whole Central Coast, which would include places like Gorokan that Councillor McGregor mentioned. I think it's very important to understand what this program is really offering, and it is in line with other programs at other local councils. This is offering a program where council is offering trees to residents, but also enables residents to plant trees of their own as long as it meets the guidelines that council will specify, which will enable increased green canopy across the entire Central Coast. This is allocating money from a draft budget that is yet to come back to council. This is not taking anything away from any existing program. Everything is pulled together, and that expands the program, and there will be more than $100,000 available for this program to enable people to plant trees, for the Central Coast to be greener, and to reduce heat island effect. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Stanton. All those in favour of the amendment, of the motion, sorry. Councillor Stanton's motion. Councillor McKenna, Councillor Moreland, Councillor Daniels, Councillor Eaton, Councillor Stanton, Councillor Wright, Councillor McNamara, Councillor McQuaid. All those against? Councillor McGregor, Councillor Castles, Councillor Crowley, Councillor Walsh, Councillor Neal, Councillor Lamont, Councillor Smith. The motion's carried.
Mr Mayor, can I move a procedural motion that we deal with the 3.3, the council meeting schedule review as the next matter? Because I think there's some urgency about that.
Got a seconder? Councillor Wright, is it?
Because it's got to be publicised if we're changing the meeting schedule.
So Councillor Wright, second. All those in favour of the procedural motion? Councillor McKenna, Councillor Moreland, Councillor Daniels, Councillor Eaton, Councillor Stanton, Councillor Wright, Councillor McNamara, Councillor McQuaid. All those against the procedural motion? Councillor McGregor, Councillor Castles, Councillor Crowley, Councillor Walsh, Councillor Neal, Councillor Lamont, Councillor Smith. It's carried. Next item is...
Mr Mayor, could I just ask a question? I didn't quite hear the rationale through you, Mr Mayor, as to why this one is being dealt with now as opposed to
It's been
the other
moved
one.
already.
Could you please explain to me what the reason is?
The reason is it's urgent that we finish it tonight because depending on the vote, the next council meeting was supposed to be there. So we just need to... So item 3.3, deferred item, notice of motion, council meeting schedule. Councillor Moreland.
Mr Mayor, I rise to speak to the revised motion that will come up on the screen.
Can I have a second? Thanks, Councillor Eaton.
Mr Mayor, I think there should be a part 4 coming up as well. Mr Mayor, I might start and we'll come back to the amended motion in a minute. Councillors, our first meeting in Gosford in March highlighted a number of real challenges. Firstly, cost. Each meeting held in Gosford costs approximately $17,000. Under the current model, that's around $85,000 per year. At a time where we're facing increasing financial pressure, that is a significant cost, particularly when that does not directly improve service delivery. Second was around logistics and safety. We saw first-hand issues with parking, access and the overall functionality of the venue. I think all of us saw we had a couple of falls and it was really disappointing that we saw our visitors attending our library to our first council meeting and they had trouble ascending the stairs. These are not minor concerns. They impact both safety and our ability to operate effectively. And it's highlighted in community feedback, including letters to the editor. Following that meeting, the experience did not meet our community's expectations. Thirdly, we already have a purpose-built facility. The chambers that we're in tonight are designed specifically for council meetings. They provide the right infrastructure, security and efficiency to allow us to do our jobs properly. I commend the motion to the chamber.
Seconders, Councillor Eaton. That's all right, we're still waiting on number 4 coming up. That's it, Councillor Milne. Councillor McGregor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I rise to speak against. The cost side of things, as far as I'm aware, has still not been confirmed, and we hear plenty of spurious claims around cost in this chamber all over the place from both sides of the, what do we call this? It's sort of a semicircle and not quite a full straight line there. There's a little bit of a sort of, whatever this shape is that we find ourselves in, whatever this arrangement. A crescent, certainly not the red crescent. There's not a lot of good first aid going on here from people tonight. Look, you know, I represent the wine ward and people go, oh, you're from Wine, why would you care about Gosford? Well, where's the boundary of my ward? It's Hill Street, Gosford, and then it's up to the Gorican Bridge. You know, I've got more people in this ward than you got in a federal electorate. All the people that live in Wyoming, Lisero, Rimba, they're always complaining why we always got to go up to Wyong. So basically, the largest population centre of the ward in the pre-existing sort of former Gosford area and the lower end of the former Wyong, it's much closer for them to go to Gosford. Part of the lie with the new Gosford Library was that it was going to be able to host the council meetings. But when we have our first council meeting, there you've got members of the public falling over, people can't hear anything, the tech doesn't work. I'd like to see a bit of a review of these machines we have in front of us, because we've always got issues with the buzzers coming on and off, and I don't know how much we paid for them. We could do a councillor request for that, but if it's more than $2 bob, it's certainly too much, because if we can't even get a button to work on these things, I don't know what we're doing with them. This chamber has its issues too. It's not like it doesn't. It's not like this is a perfect place. I get that it's more familiar for some who've spent a bit of time here in the past. But part of the reason for having the Gosford building, or the lie around having the building with the configuration it was that you'd be able to have your council meetings there. Now, people who are in Gosford area, we're constantly hearing about the importance of Gosford as the strategic capital of the Central Coast. And what does government do? It runs away from Gosford. Well, Gosford's been on life support since the 90s, and the only thing that was keeping it going for the better part of the last 30 years was the government services that were in there. It was actually the council workers that kept all the shops and things going. We've got economic data from that shows that the reason why these cafes were thriving is because people were going, buying their coffees and getting their lunches there, and that was generating that activity. You know, when you've got a satellite hub where people are commuting to Sydney, or investors are buying these places for tax reasons, or we've got, you know, DCJ kids in apartments and things like that in there because we don't have a proper system to deal with these things, we're not really servicing Gosford. It's not being served from an economic point of view. For the council to further withdraw from Gosford, to spit on all those residents that live down there in your strategic growth region, your strategic capital, and say, no, you don't need to have meetings down there. You're not worth 17 grand, if it even is that. And I mean, really, I do question that figure. I'd love to know how we do our budgeting, because, you know, people either have some incredibly generous agreements and contracts, which we're unaware of, or, I don't know, I guess awards just don't apply anymore like they used to. Councillors, one meeting a year is clearly inadequate in Gosford. We've got a region with a population size similar to Tasmania or the ACT, and this organisation, this big bad Central Coast Council, can't even bother to hold more than one meeting a year in our strategic region. What does that say for all the population density that lives down there? What does it say for the businesses down there? Well, hopefully the blueprint extends to Wyong, because they might have to find their way up here unless we have more meetings in Saddles, secret meetings with developers again. This motion solves nothing. And all this talk, this like constant fetishisation of the coins down the back of the couch, get rid of your signs. Get rid of this additional verge, $100,000 here. You know, it's $100,000 there, $800,000 there, $400,000 there. Oh, but we're really economic conservatives. Well, strike me pink. I mean, it's pretty unconventional for an economic conservative to consistently increase the outlay of capital and to consistently not worry about revenue, jack up the debt more. That's a good idea. Let's get some more loans to build some more signs or something. I mean, the cosplay around fiscal conservatism is mind-boggling. I really, maybe for Christmas I'll buy everyone a copy of Friedman and Hayek so we can actually understand some of the ideas we pretend to promulgate and stop worshipping the statues of Maggie. She's been gone a while now, unfortunately. That's sad. So, councillors, one meeting per year. I mean, we're having all these extraordinary meetings. There'll be committee meetings there. Surely we can afford to do this. Gosford Council used to meet in Erina Library. I know there's a lot of talk in this building about how libraries are irrelevant, we need to get rid of them and they're just a cost outlay. Why don't we use some of these facilities that have already been used in the past and are already available? It's not rocket science, it really shouldn't be that hard. And if it's too hard and it costs too much, why are we even here in the first place with this? Why aren't we looking at some of these issues in a more strategic way? Again, this is another byproduct of the 10 years of merger. You pay more, you get less, you have less representation, you have less assets, you have a crumbling infrastructure system,
Thanks.
And this is what you end up with, motions like
Councillor
this.
McGregor. Thank you. Councillor Neal.
Mr Mayor, I rise to oppose this motion, and for a range of reasons, particularly noting the benefits that we derive from the fantastic Gosford Library. A great building, something I'm very proud of. I think I've mentioned it before, but I might take the opportunity to mention it again. That back in the 90s, the council there had the foresight to determine to put in place an additional fund to create the Gosford Library. So there once were councils that actually had foresight and thought about what the council might need in 20 years' time, not just argued about how we can stop the council interacting too much with the community. The library is a fantastic building. I was very proud to be there and open it. Oh, not to open it, but to be there with the mayor and open the building. And frankly, I thought that the use of the Gosford Library as a meeting venue was positive in all sorts of ways. I certainly saw no problem with the parking. I parked out the front quite easily and trundled out there to go to my car and go home without any problems whatsoever. I'm quite confused about this supposed allocation of $17,000 to meet there. I note that those figures are provided by the councillor, not by the staff, and that in the comments from the staff that there's no indication that confirms that. And there's also a fairly major omission. Clearly the use of this venue here has its own costs. The fact that we keep this much larger building going and the staff that are involved here, providing for all the facilities that we require for this council meeting would in itself have a cost. I would suggest that probably that cost is well in advance of the $17,000 suggested by the councillor who's proposing this motion. I have to say that in the time that I've been on council, the decision by this council to meet at the Gosford Library on a regular number of occasions during the year has probably been the motion that I have had the most positive response to from the community. And I feel quite saddened by the fact that that positive interaction between the community and the council is being reduced by this motion. The cost of $17,000, if true, and I don't think we really have any evidence that that is correct, the lack of balance between the costs involved with the additional funding required for meeting here in this chamber is, I don't feel, a proper basis to frustrate the community that would very much like to visit the council meetings. There's been a number of occasions where members of the community have said to me that they don't go to the council meetings, they watch it online, and we know that's a mixed experience because it's too far. We do it regularly, we don't think much about it, but for older people and other people who have commitments in the evenings and have family commitments, travelling that additional half hour, and the cost of course, prevents them from really being involved in the democratic process of the council. And I think it's important that people are involved. There is transparency, that the community feels part of what goes on here, that they are part of the discussion, they are part of the assessment of the proposals that come before us. I don't think it's just an added extra. I think it's a fundamental part of democracy and the way council operates. So I urge you to reject this motion and to continue to keep faith with not only the community at large, but in particular the southern end of the council, particularly Gosford and the Peninsula, who might not otherwise be able to personally be involved in the council meetings as they happen from month to month.
Thanks, Councillor Neil. Councillor Smith? Councillor Neil, can you put your buzzer off, please? Or Councillor Castles, you've got...
Oh.
There's about thank you. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I have just got a couple of questions and then I will speak against it. So through you to the CEO, Mr Mayor, so I think, I've stated a number of times that it is the clear recollection of councillors and the community that it was always intended that the new Gosford Regional Library would have the ability to host council meetings. Can I ask through you to the CEO, firstly, is that the CEO's understanding of the intention?
The building is designed as a multi-purpose space, and it is designed to be able to host a range of meetings, including council meetings, and we have some specific tech there to allow that to occur.
Okay, so there is already technology there to allow those meetings to be held at the regional library?
Yes, as we experienced at the last meeting at the library, that is the technology that's in place, the existing technology that we used at the last meeting at the library.
Yep, okay. So can I also ask, and I know staff did provide a response to various questions about the estimate of 17,000, but just briefly, could a staff member please outline that 17,000 figure or the cost of holding that meeting in Gosford through you, Mr. Mayor, to the CEO? Or?
Yes, and just like at our last meeting, I would caveat this in, we've had one meeting there. It is difficult to estimate the costs, but I can confirm that the direct costs are around the $5,000 mark. That involves the civic support and IT staff that are required to attend for some time to set up the facility and to ensure it's running, and then to re-attend the following day to pack it back down and enable other uses to occur. In terms of the additional indirect costs, that's related to both costs for library staff and facilities staff to assist in those processes, the additional security on site to help guide and usher people, and there are some lessons learnt from previous meetings held there about how we might need to increase that. And then, of course, the indirect costs of diverted resourcing to all of the attendees, including councillors at the meeting, to travel to that site and to return from that site at the end.
Okay, so it sounds to me that not all of those costs that you just outlined are in addition to costs that would be incurred when the meeting's held here. Would that be correct, or are you talking all of those as being in addition to the cost of holding the meeting here?
So the specific cost that would be in addition to a meeting held at Wyong are the additional time to set up the space, both in terms of facility staff and civic support staff and IT staff. Obviously, we need to move furniture, wire, microphones and the like, and we need to pack that all down the next day. So there are a number of hours for multiple staff in that scenario. And then the travel time for all other staff in the round trip from Wyong to Gosford. They're the additional costs. There are also some additional security costs and other minor bits and pieces. In terms of opportunity costs, there's the value of the facilities. So we hire 3 rooms. It's for the full day and part of the following day, so they are not available to the community, and there's potential revenue lost. And there's other minor bits and pieces that come on top of that. Again, we've held one meeting there. We would expect that over time those processes speed up as people get more familiar with it, and that we test those out and we learn from that.
Okay, thank you. And that was one of the points that I was going to make, is that I would expect that process would be streamlined with increased frequency. So look, I will speak against this motion, Mr. Mayor. So as I've stated publicly, it was always the intention to have meetings in Gosford at the new regional library. And I think there is a reason for that. We are a very large area. There are many people to the southern end of our Central Coast that are engaged, and as we saw on the first meeting, and sure, that may not be repeated, but there were a lot of people that wanted to come along and see their council and see the decision making in person. I want to just comment on a couple of those comments. The opportunity cost, I think I would probably discount that a little bit, since, again, it was always intended to be there. So the council meeting was always intended. So I don't think it's reasonable and fair to say, oh, well, now there's an opportunity cost. That was always the intention. In terms of travel time, yes, I appreciate that staff, there is additional travel, but let's hope staff from the North do go to the south for various things and vice versa, and that's just part of the cost of this council doing business and serving our community. I would note that for councillors in the southern end, and I think at the last council meeting, for me, driving from Gosford to Wyong to get to this meeting was about 45 minutes, and that was a good run. And I'm not complaining about that. That's part of my role. But for a community person to drive 45 minutes to get to a council meeting and then add on if they live down at Kilcare or if they live down at Woy Woy or they live down at Edelong, that is not a fair and reasonable dismissing that issue for our community that wants to be involved. I note it was raised about the stairs, and certainly I observed that issue as well. So another question, I'll stop the clock, another question through you to the CEO, Mr Mayor. Is council doing something about those stairs? Because it's not just a council meeting where somebody's going to trip up the stairs. There could be a range of events where that is going to become a hazard.
Through the Mayor, yes, we are reviewing that at the moment.
And so there will be a remedy to that, is the expectation of some kind?
I believe so.
Okay, so that rules out that issue. So we're finding excuses, and look, I you know, from our councillors from the northern end saying we shouldn't have meetings in Gosford. That is a really quite an outrageous slur on our community in the southern end of the Central Coast. It's unreasonable, it's unfair, it's backflipping on what was intended, and I really would urge our council to step up and actually care about the whole of the Central Coast, the whole of the community on the Central Coast. Just one last thing, I know the cost keeps coming up. Can I just check, what did we end up getting for the Gosford Council building from the uni? I assume it's not confidential anymore, is it? What did we actually get for it?
I don't have the exact number, it's 22 or 23 million.
Oh, that sounds cheap, doesn't it? But certainly it would appear that it would be fair and reasonable that some of that be reinvested to the Gosford City Centre for council business, since we just sold a former council building. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
I'd just like to put a procedural motion to put the committee meetings back by 30 minutes each. Second by Councillor Reaton, so that we can finish all the business. All those in favour?
Oh, sorry.
All those, so Councillor McKenna, Councillor Moreland, Councillor Daniels, Councillor McGregor, Councillor Castles, Councillor Crowley, Councillor Walsh, Councillor Smith, Councillor Eaton, Councillor Stanton, Councillor McNamara and Councillor McQuaid against? No. And Councillor Lamont and Councillor Neal abstained. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll take my buzzer off.
Yeah,
I was actually...
everybody else. There's no amendment.
So, are we rearranging?
Councillor Walsh?
I thought Councillor Castles was next. Are we?
We can't.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Castles. Apparently, I'm speaking. Yeah. Okay. Through you, Mr Mayor, can I ask to the CEO, can we be given any other examples, even, I'd like more than one, but even at least one, examples of when a resolution of council has been reversed so quickly after just one meeting?
council can resolve to change its mind, essentially, within 3 months, it needs a motion of rescission. After 3 months, it needs a simple motion of council.
Okay, which isn't the answer to my question. My question is an example of...
That's not a question for staff.
Who would it be a question for?
It's a rhetorical question, and it's a question
No.
for the meeting.
Rhetorical's when you aren't expecting an answer. I'm expecting an answer.
Well, I don't have that answer. I don't have that answer. And how many thousands of... Sorry, I won't...
So, okay, it just seems like this is a motion of convenience, and certainly it is not a motion of fairness, so I speak against the motion. I would like to ask through you, Mr Mayor, to Councillor Moreland, what were you thinking when you came up with this, which seems like such an unfair motion to the community of the South? You can comment or not comment. It's and if the figure of 17,000 a meeting, which obviously adds up to 85,000 for the 5, Councillor Wright might like to correct me on that, but I think he'll find I'm right. That we, 85,000 that the residents and the ratepayers, the community at large in the South, which their rates have gone towards that 85,000, and that we don't consider it reasonable to provide them with access to fair and transparent democratic processes in the South. I think that this is really a challenge for us because we have, we're supposed to have public accountability to our community, and based on $85,000 out of the budget, I just cannot see how you can argue that the residents of the South don't deserve to have that $85,000 spent on them to have access to our council meetings as the residents of the North do. And of course, some will say, well, the residents from everywhere are, able to go to Wyong, and of course we have councillors sitting in this chamber who come from all parts of the coast, and we all spend various amounts of time travelling for doing council work within our wards and also to attend meetings. These are just the ordinary council meetings. Obviously, democracy costs money, accountability costs money, representation costs money, and this is a really small amount of money to support our residents of the South to be able to access the democratic process, or what is supposed to be a democratic process, happening here on the Central Coast. I really find this, I really urge our colleague councillors to vote against this. I know they won't. And I honestly don't know how you look your residents in the eye when you come along and run into them in the street, or how do you respond to their emails when they say to you, why are you wanting to neglect the residents of the South? Like, how do we answer that? I mean, when this vote goes through, and of course it'll win, and 8 will vote for it, and 7 will vote against it, or maybe not. But what we have is, at least those residents can see that the councillors who vote against this don't have to explain themselves about why the residents of the South aren't afforded due access to our council meetings in person.
Thanks, Councillor Walsh. Thank you, Councillor Beaton.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I speak in favour of the motion, and I will be moving the motion be put, as there is no amendment. Doesn't matter, it hasn't been put, there's only one thing on the table.
You've spoken already, Ms. Whitton. You have to speak. Councillor Eaton, you have to speak.
Yes, I was
But
going
Councillor
to.
Smith, you'd already spoken, you couldn't put. No. He's just put the motion. No, he's just put the motion.
Yep.
Councillor Eaton, are you speaking?
Mr Mayor, I foreshadowed an amendment.
I can keep speaking, but I put the motion.
All right.
It should be put.
Shame. Sorry, Councillor Lamont and Councillor Smith. The motion's been put. The motion's been
Point of
put.
order, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Millen, do you want to speak? To close?
Can I,
Councillor Millen?
Once again this week, Mr Mayor.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Walsh, I'm happy to explain myself to the people of the South. We keep talking about the people of the South. We should be talking about the people of the Central Coast. It's one council. I know not all councillors are happy it's one council, but it's one council. Our council chambers are here in Wyong, where we are here tonight. Council meetings are formal decision-making and governance forums, not community engagement sessions, and it must be balanced against cost, efficiency, safety and operational effectiveness. Our council chambers here at Wyong are specifically designed for council business. They provide secure access for council and councillors, for officers and councillors, and deliver appropriate public access and safety measures. They support efficient, consistent and professional meeting operations. We have a council chamber here, right? State government doesn't move around where they hold their meetings. We had the example of Tasmania a few minutes ago. If we want to act like a state government, we have our council meetings in our chamber, right? It's purpose-built. We've spent a lot of money. It's been mentioned several times that over the last 15 months, how much money we spent on these chambers. Let's use it efficiently. Let's try to make really good decisions. I'll put the motion. Thank you.
Thanks. Now put the motion. All those in favour of the motion? Yeah, the motion's been put. Councillor McKenna, Councillor Millen, Councillor Daniels, Councillor Eaton, Councillor Stanton, Councillor McNamara, Councillor McQuaid. Against? Councillor McGregor, Councillor Castles, Councillor Crowley, Councillor Walsh, Councillor Neal, Councillor Lamont, Councillor Smith. I'll use my casting vote to vote for it. So, carried. Next item in the agenda is 3.2, the third item, notice of motion demonstrating responsible leadership. Councillor...
Mr Mayor, before we go to this motion, could I ask a question, please, a procedural question? I put my buzzer on about 10 minutes ago because we were getting close to 5:30 and I figured with the Economic Development Committee not meeting by 5:30 that may have some implications. So what I'm curious about is, can Council direct the committee meeting to go back a half an hour without the committee meeting being open, or should the committee have opened and then decided to do it itself? Can I get some clarity around that? I just want to make sure we haven't got caught up on any procedural side of things.
It's an interesting question. There's two ways you deal with it. The first one is the way that the council meeting started, which means the committee meeting has to start within 30 minutes, but there's a resolution of council. The committee's I guess essentially a constituent of the council, so in some ways the council can reset the time of the committee meeting. But essentially a council or a committee meeting can start within half an hour if it doesn't have a quorum without a resolution of council.
So what's the timeline now for the committee meeting? So how long have we got left before the committees start?
We've put it back half an hour.
Okay.
Yeah. So
did you say 10 minutes, John? 15 minutes. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
You got a second, Councillor Eaton?
Sorry?
So, Councillor McNamara, Councillor McNamara has put that we put the next two items back to the next council meeting, and so the committee meeting can start in 15 minutes. And Councillor Reaton seconded it, so all those in favour? Yep.
Can you give me, thank you. One of those motions that's being deferred is my notice of motion. Obviously, the next meeting is the May meeting, of which I will not be in attendance. Sorry, the June meeting. So could I ask, with your indulgence, that my matter be deferred till the July meeting? Sorry, yeah. To the July meeting.
Yep.
That's correct.
3.4.
I'm asking the indulgence of Councillor McNamara.
Councillor.
Sorry, my confusion.
Yep. Okay. So we got that. Everybody got that? All those in favour? Councillor McKenna, Councillor Mullen, Councillor Daniels, Councillor Neal, Councillor Eaton, Councillor Stanton, Councillor Crowley, Councillor McNamara, Councillor McQuaid. All those against? Councillor McGregor, Councillor Castles, Councillor Smith, Councillor Walsh. A change, Councillor Crawley take her from voting against for to voting against. And Councillor Castles. So that motion is carried. Thank you. So meeting finished at 5:42.